This one involves an 8-year-old kid going to get a Christmas tree with his dad and grandpa, and he never came back home and vanished without a trace. So, a sad case, but another interesting story that you guys have been requested. So I'm going to cover it for you today. Now, I am going to talk in depth about Crater Lake in a future video. Not in this one because I am doing a compilation of cases and disappearances. But this is part of one of them. And I thought it'd be such an interesting story that deserved, I guess, her own video, or its own video. That's the Spanish coming out of me, where we put a sex to every single thing we say. The table cannot be the table. It needs to be a female table. You get what I mean? Okay, so today's case takes us to Rocky Point. This is somewhere in the area of around, I should say, Crater Lake. And particularly, this spot is located adjacent to Highway 140 in Oregon. If you haven't been in the area, let me paint a picture for you, because I've been traveling Highway 140 for 3 years now, since I came to Oregon for the first time to visit over a Christmas break. And this Highway 140 goes kind of across Oregon from west to east and continues into Nevada. And it's actually the Nevada desert, or one of them, area. And it's a very desolate kind of road. It has some small towns in between, but sometimes you will see signs that say next town 140 miles away, or something warning you to get gas before you continue driving down that road. If you're in the Nevada area, you will be going through the wilderness and some public lands, a bunch of burros and big rabbits. Foxes go across the road with, I don't know, they have guts. I mean, they go right in front of you. And it's on the Oregon side is still high desert, but with a lot of trees and kind of forest areas around. So, in this case, now that you have a picture, it happened in the Oregon side and along this freeway, or highway I should say, and particularly on the banks of Upper Klamath Lake and the Sky Lakes Wilderness area. Needless to say, desolate and very wild, with a lot of wildlife, very active at all times of day. But on December 5th, 1998, Robert Engbretson, I'm gonna say it like that, it's a combination that my tongue apparently doesn't know how to pronounce. his son, Derek, and Robert's father, so Derek's grandfather, decided to go there for their Christmas tree, which is something very popular. I don't know if where you live, but I've noticed that here in Oregon, we have some public lands around us, and there's public lands everywhere here, but I do encounter some people asking for directions to this public lands, or sometimes it's like a small area where you can go and cut a Christmas tree. But some people, and I'm not kidding you, I talked to this couple last weekend, and they came from like 50 miles away from us just to get the perfect Christmas tree. And in this case, it was kind of the same, because this family drove from Bonanza, which is about 55 miles away from this particular spot. It is a beautiful drive, and it's surrounded by beautiful forest and lakes, so it was the perfect trip to go get their Christmas tree. They got there in the afternoon though, which I don't understand because it's December, the beginning of December. Okay, for here it was December 5th, but now it's the beginning of December for me too. And I can tell you that it gets dark super early here, so keep in mind that they went to this particular spot a little bit too late in the afternoon for my taste. Where I am at 4:30 is dusk. I mean, you can see that it's going to get dark within minutes. And they were in a forested area, so it gets dark way earlier. Not because of something weird, but because the trees covering the trails and everything underneath. They all got out of the car and they thought, we're gonna look for the Christmas tree, and we're leaving. It was the entire experience, kind of the whole thing, the drive, the family time, guys trip kind of thing. So they were wearing very warm clothes because it was very cold, and even little Derek had a hatchet in his hand. So the trio went looking for this perfect tree, and though this was kind of a forested area, in the winter time, or that particular day I should say, there was snow on the ground, and the vegetation is not as thick as when it's summer. police couldn't find any tracks or anything. Keep in mind, there was snow on the ground. It was not fresh, but still, the best case scenario when you're trying to track somebody, if you're not a professional tracker, is, by the size of their shoe. You can kind of follow after, you guys got out of the truck or something like that. There was nowhere else to go, really. There was snow again on the ground, and you think that make things easier, but not Robert or his dad could track him, so they ended up going by the road and flagging a car, asking them to call the sheriff for help. Now, this is kind of a joke, really, I have to say, because I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, but I will tell you a few things. This hurt. Okay, by the time that they reported this to the person driving by, I think it was about 4 p.m. So we are losing daylight at this point, okay? And you're gonna laugh at me, but my daughter gets super mad at me because when I see the signs, I don't need to know the time. I am so, I guess, getting used to being here that I know the signs that nighttime is coming super fast, and I don't even need to look at the sun. Sometimes it's cloudy all day and kind of dark and gloomy, but you learn to know those signs that will tell you, wrap things up and go home. For those of you who stay out at night, it's kind of different if you live in a city. I didn't care if I have to drive at night, but here it's to get to where I live, I have to drive about 30 minutes at speed limit through the mountains to get to our place. So when it's nighttime, it takes me an hour and 15-30 minutes, because I literally have to go at 10 miles per hour because there's no light and there's no how can I say it? It seems like you're driving through a tunnel. Everything is dark around you. So a deer can jump in front of you and really mess things up. So I'm assuming that these people didn't care about the drive home, but I'm sure that they cared, that they knew that they needed help as soon as possible, because it was gonna get dark and there's an 8-year-old lost in the woods in a 23-degree Fahrenheit kind of night, and it was barely starting. But coming back to the search being a joke, I'm not criticizing the police. I am saying that it took forever, and they're kind of, I read the logs of what was done since they got the 911 call, and it was pretty weird. By 5, I think they flagged the person at around 4, and by 5, nobody had arrived because they were caught in a storm that was starting. Mind you, the higher you are, the worse that the storm is, so it's a pretty bad area when there's a storm. They call SAR, the is just a tiny town, so they knew that they didn't have all the resources. And I'm assuming that as a father or as a human being, you can only imagine what a family is going through when they have their child go missing in the woods during a storm with 20 degrees. So they called the state police, which I was stopped once by a state police in that area. He was a pretty nice guy. But you can tell that they don't handle this kind of situation very often. So when the weather cleared, which it really didn't take that long, it was one of those random storms that were terrible, but that day it just passed, all of a sudden it's gone. And so the Air Force sent I guess it's called FLIR, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's those helicopters that are equipped to scan for heat, like body heat, but they couldn't find anything. They looked for days, even with the snow piling, but nothing. There were no tracks. So unless this kid had wings, how is it possible? How far could an 8-year-old gone within minutes from his dad and grandpa? I don't know. But they did find a small shelter made of, it was made out of 3 fir trees. Fir trees are the very tall ones. And they were just fallen trees. And apparently, they fell in a way that you could kind of go underneath. And I don't know if a homeless person used it before, but it seemed like somebody used it. But according to my research, even that helicopter couldn't have sensed the body heat there because of the logs. I mean, we're talking about the 90s. I don't know if I'm assuming that got better, but even when dogs were taken there, they never picked up his scent. So, no tracks, no scent, and the only ones that they could find were the originals really coming out of the truck and kind of following to one particular spot where it seemed like he was picked up, where I don't know. Derek's mom and dad spent weeks there looking for Derek. I just can't even imagine. And they took a Christmas tree and left it up for 3 years in a row, hoping that Derek would come back. Now let's talk about some theories and some other cases similar to this one that were covered in the 411 book. And I just want to quickly mention in the end to give you a full picture of why this is such a mysterious case. Now, the first theory that the authorities had was that he came back to the road to kind of try to find people. And he was picked up. Later on, it was even theorized that a pedophile picked him up, which I think it's way too much of a coincidence. And it's like, is it possible? Yeah, but I think it's 1 in 1 million kind of shot. Yes, this highway is very desolate, but it does get some traffic. Good traffic, really, for having nothing around it, but I don't think that happened, but that was one of the theories. The other one is that he stepped on the lake that was covered with ice, interesting to know that they developed right after they disappeared. They weren't being looked over by family members. Well, maybe the family members had something to do with it. I don't think in this case it's true, because this kind of devastated this family, and there was two of them. So even if one hurt this boy, it would have been harder to both of them to be on the same page. Possible? Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Okay. And then they went missing near a body of water. Yeah, that's very common, I guess. But the fact that two of the boys were 8 years old and the other one was 9 years old, and that they vanished in this area, it is very, very interesting. I'm gonna give you kind of a sneak peek, I guess, of my other video about Crater Lake and some disappearances there. Crater Lake is one of the most beautiful national parks here in Oregon, and I've talked to people this summer. I don't even know how to put this, but because of business, I've talked to people that were coming just to visit Crater Lake. I mean, yes, they probably spent a couple of days here on the coast, but they always wanted to go to Crater Lake. And they went camping, and people that from all, like, I don't even know how to say, like, people with money, and that you wouldn't think want to go camping, dry camping in a national park. Well, they are curious, and they are nothing but beautiful things, and it's a sight to see. I mean, that's Crater Lake is one of those places that I believe you would never forget. It is very deep. It has blue water, and the history behind of how it was formed, really, I think it kind of adds to the mystery. However, there is this thing, or this, I don't even know how to call it, but Native Americans kind of witness how this became a lake. And it was very dramatic, and they, after that, they kind of passed on this, I don't know, tell, I'm gonna call it a tell, but that they shouldn't go there. That was a forbidden place, and there was a specific area of Crater Lake that they wouldn't just visit or travel, because travelers that went through that area would vanish, or something terrible happened to them. So a lot of people believe that its beauty is to attract people to go and let the lake or the wilderness around it take care of the rest, and actually take people or do something to them. Like, I don't even know how to explain it without giving away too much. But I'm gonna leave it at that. So this kid got lost in that radius around this place that Native Americans feared so much. It was meant to be a guy's trip, a Christmas trip, and it became a you so much for your support. As always, guys, I truly appreciate you choosing to support my channel. It's because of you that the mystery theory keeps on going on YouTube. Again,